Please like the video and subscribe to Reddit Daily Confession. Thank you. 3 years ago, I abandoned my son after my divorce warning. Long post. This is essentially a diary entry to get this off my chest for the new year. TL. Doctor, my depression spiraled out of control after my son turned 2. I lost hair, lost weight, lost my mind, and after multiple attempts to find solutions I divorced my husband and gave my son up for kinship adoption to my sister-in-law. I later moved across the country and I'm starting to rekindle my relationship with my ex. Adam and I were married for 8 years and together for 12. We spent half of that time together trying for a baby. I had 9 miscarriages. It was horrible and traumatizing, but I wanted a baby. I wanted to experience pregnancy and labor and I didn't give one shit about adopting a child. I wanted this. We stopped trying until the spring of 2013 when we went on an anniversary trip. I didn't know it, but I came home pregnant. By July, I found out that I was 3 months, nearly 4, and I was over the moon. This was it. This was our time and all the stars were aligning. I spent the next 6 months puking my brains out, flinching whenever someone touched me, and absolutely repulsed by any intimacy from my then husband. But I was still happy, still excited, and still enjoying every moment of having that life inside me, reverently documenting every moment of the journey. My mom made the joke that we would have the best baby ever, since the idea is a bad pregnancy produces an angelic baby and a great pregnancy produces a demon. I laughed at it and never thought of it again until I had a LUCAS* in my arms 6 months later. A year later, I was suicidal and rapidly losing weight. Lucas was a monster. He screamed constantly, but he didn't like to be held. He hated playing peekaboo games, and he wasn't reaching his milestones. My mother berated me constantly and blamed his behavior on my inability to breastfeed. My in-laws speculated that I had been drinking or smoking during pregnancy right to my face. During this year Adam and I took our separate bedrooms to the next level. He moved into the basement. His sister Sam** was the only person that I felt I could talk to, but even then I worried she would report back to her brother all of my horrible thought. We fought about who should stay home, because I wanted to go back to work, but living where we did, we either needed a nanny or one of us to be home when the other wasn't able to. I spent my days crying, and eventually got back to smoking pot in the hopes it would mellow me out. Sam offered to help if we moved to her province, but my husband didn't want to move his practice, and I was happy where we were. At the urging of my ex and my doctors, I joined parental groups and drove the hour to the nearby city to talk to other parents of autistic kids. All these people did was talk about how rewarding it was to raise their kids, how much easier it was than they ever expected, and how they didn't understand the stigma. One mother raved about the amazing moment her 17-year-old spoke for the first time. He said, "Yes, please." I was horrified. I felt like a fucking monster. Lucas was approaching 2 now. He was nearly a toddler and he acted more like a 6-month-old. And that was being generous. But a woman from my group, Sandra** and I seemed to get on well when she too joined around this time, and she expressed her sorrow for feeling like a failure. We exchanged numbers and got together often, sharing horror stories of finding the kids covered in God knows what, hitting us whenever they were touched, and the constant care they required that other kids didn't. Adam was happy. We were having sex again. I had friends. I'd stopped losing hair, and everything was good. Sam visited and for a brief moment I felt normal, with a normal family. I felt like maybe I could do this after all, that I had just overreacted. And then Lucas's 2nd birthday came around. Sandra brought her son over and her husband. The guys watched the kids, while she and I polished off 3 bottles of wine. "Oh, I wouldn't trade Travis* for anything," she gushed. "It's hard, but I love him. It gets easier. I would totally do it all over again." I laughed and winked over my glass. "You're better than me," because I'd say fuck that and go about my business. "What do you mean?" "I'd get an abortion. I wouldn't want to do this again." She was quiet, obviously, and I'd clearly stuck my foot in my mouth. She and her family left a few hours later after cake and BBQ, and she wouldn't return any of my texts or calls for several weeks. Eventually, she texted me back to say that she thought I was someone else and would prefer I don't contact her again. I cried for days. I was completely gutted, and at my lowest point I screamed, "This is your fault," at Lucas when he was having one of his meltdowns. Adam came running and took Lucas to his room. When he came back, he told me I needed therapy and that we couldn't keep having these problems. I spent the next 6 months at my parents' place on the East Coast. I was glad to be away, and, as the phrase goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Adam and I were on the mends, and chatting with each other constantly. He didn't offer up information about Lucas unless I asked, which I only did when prompted by my parents. He told me he had a nanny while I was gone, and it might be good to keep her there. When I came back, I agreed and packed my bags to go home several months later. During this, Sam stopped calling and reached out to the nanny, get updates on Lucas. I considered the loss of our friendship collateral for my mental health improving. My ex and I were basically never home. We hired 2 other nannies to take shifts and went about our days happily pretending that he didn't exist until we inevitably had to go back. Our sex life thrived, and we even got back into old habits, role-playing strangers and meeting somewhere before going back to a hotel. We got lazy, we stopped caring about precautions, and just after Lucas's 3rd birthday, I found out I was pregnant with baby number 2. Adam held me while I cried and drove me to the hospital for the abortion. I guess that had been the honeymoon phase, because when we came home, things plummeted. I blamed Lucas for feeling like I had to get an abortion, not wanting to subject another person to this life. I stopped asking the nanas about how he was. One of them made small talk with me one day and started talking about him. I changed the subject, and later that week, when she did it again, I told her I didn't care. She stopped talking about him and happily told me about her and her boyfriend instead. I was thankful to not have to pretend. This continued for several weeks until I eventually confronted Adam head on. "I don't want to do this anymore," I told him while we were out with Lucas. "I know. Okay. I don't know what you need me to say. I can't fix this. I don't expect you to, and I know you don't want to do this either." Adam didn't say anything, and we slowly began the process of separation. I moved out of the house, cut contact with my in-laws and even my own family. I was completely secluded. I don't know how the topic came up, but while talking about the divorce, Sam came to visit and take over my role and that of the nannies. I researched a lot during the divorce about custody, our obligations and what would happen, since our prenup specified me retaining majority custody in the house, but I wanted neither. My lawyer, upon hearing about Sam's attachment, suggested kinship adoption. I shrugged it off, signed my papers, and left the province, leaving Adam the house and the kid. I came back 8 months later when Adam called and told me he wanted to go through with the kinship adoption to his sister. Our rights were signed over, and he gave her the house. My life improved substantially since then. I completed my master's degree, got my tubes tied, and took my grandmother's maiden name to remove myself completely. I've never been happier, but I've been reminiscent of Adam since quarantine started. He must have been thinking of me too, because he contacted me on Halloween. I invited him for Christmas. He flew in, quarantined, and has been staying with me since. Sometimes I feel guilty, but right now, watching him sleep and listening to the music playing from his phone, I'm reminded of how happy he makes me. We're better off. I was a terrible mother, and I got out. *NAMES have been changed. Edit. I copied and pasted this after writing it over several days. I didn't realize that Reddit would jumble it so badly, so there is missing info from me doing a last minute edit after it was posted. My older brother is autistic, but lives on his own, has a career, and an education. I naively thought this experience had me prepared for anything, especially because Adam was older than me, and this is an own potential issue with older fathers. My doctors chalked my miscarriages up to stress from my depression and being off my medication while trying to get pregnant. I have bipolar 2nd and had gone off all medications in the hopes of giving my baby the best chance. Lucas did have therapy and all sorts of treatment. I constantly brought him to the city, and eventually we switched to having a specialist do in-house visits because he was getting bigger and harder to cart around. I don't absolve myself. I feel a lot of regret and pain, but for his well-being and mine it's best not to have contact. Sam is his mother. Like me, she really wanted kids, but was never able to because she's not married or in any relationship. She was having a hard time trying to adopt. She latched onto Lucas from the beginning, and I often joked that she was his second mum. He could not be in better hands. Yes, Adam and I have money. I have inheritance, and he is a psychiatrist with his own practice. We both send Sam money and the house is paid for, but neither of us has contact with Lucas. Adam hasn't since we signed the paperwork on the adoption, and I haven't since the divorce was finalized. My abortion wasn't because I thought I would have another autistic kid. I didn't want to have a neurotypical child and bring that up in that environment, watching me hate myself and eventually Lucas. I had these horrible thoughts that I would love one more than the other, and neither of them deserved that. Yes, this post focuses on me, not because I'm self-centered, but because my confession is about me leaving my family behind. It's not about Lucas. That's not my story to write. Adam is thinking of moving his practice or trying to get work at a local hospital. Right now he plans to stay for a few more weeks. Edit 2. I cannot express all of my gratitude for those that understand and the well wishes. I understand the angry comments, I do, but all I want people to understand is that it's not important for Lucas and I to be reunited just because I'm his biological mother. His mother is Sam, and on some level I think she always has been. Lucas deserves Sam, and I will forever be indebted to her for giving him the stable life that I and Adam couldn't. For his benefit, I will not re-enter his life. It's not fair to him for me to pop in and out at my convenience. I appreciate the photos Sam sends me, but unless Lucas progresses to a point where he can specifically ask for me, I don't want to push into his life.